Ready to sign in? No. Want to give it a few more minutes? Oh, we got quite a few participants. Okay. You guys ready to get started?
We sure are.
Let's do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Hammack. I'm the CTO of DHE Computer Systems with locations in Centennial, Colorado and in Tempe, Arizona. Today, I am thrilled to have my partners from Linewize join us to talk about how we can empower students in student safety and help them be more prepared in mental well-being. So today we're going to talk through why these things are so important to us. And there we go. Sorry about that. And we're going to be showcasing some of the Linewize technology that I think is best of breed, fantastic, and really instrumental in providing students those necessary tools. DHE has been around for 34 years. We sell in every state in the country. We have offices, like I said, in Tempe, Arizona, and Centennial. But we have a broad reach, California all the way to Maine. So we're a great partner to work with. Obviously, we sell software, we sell hardware solutions, pretty much everything you can think of to support K-12 institutions across America. And then today, one lucky winner will win a 500E Gen 4 Chromebook with a full HD display, active pen digitizer. So if you hang on and stay through the entire webinar, one lucky recipient will be selected and we will get it shipped out to you on Friday. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to my Linewize team.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for partnering up with us to do this webinar, to present this content to everybody who's watching, to all of you who are joining us live. Thank you so much for being here, for showing interest in this topic of children's online safety and digital well-being, and for joining us to learn a little bit about how we approach this topic at Linewize. So for a little bit of background on me, as you can see, I am the Director of Wellbeing at Linewize, and I really come at this topic of children's online safety from the field of psychology. So I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. I've also trained in psychotherapy, so I've worked a lot with adults and children in both sort of a clinical and an educational setting. And the sort of healthy technology use area has been of particular interest for me for the past 6 or 7 years. I think once we all started noticing just how much more children were engaging with technology than they were before. And this is a topic that Linewize are very interested in as an organization. So we don't only spend time thinking and talking about some of the sort of bare essentials that school districts need, like filters, but we're really going deep, and we talk about children's well-being as well. We talk about healthy technology use and healthy digital habits, and we work very hard to bring in the whole community when it comes to that topic. So with that, I'll hand it over to my lovely colleague, Teresa.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay?
You're
Great.
good.
Awesome. So welcome everybody. I'm Teresa Reeves. I'm the Territory Director for Linewise in the West, and proud to call Colorado home. And for my fellow Coloradans joining us today, I hope you've successfully dug out from this last storm and are enjoying the week of Colorado roller coaster spring weather. So we're so stoked to have you guys here today. And what I'd like to do is go through a couple of housekeeping items as we get started on our webinar today. So before we begin, let's cover how we're going to process the webinar. This webinar will be recorded for you guys. So all the slides and the recording will be sent to you guys within the next 48 hours by email. And we also welcome you to revisit the content yourself, and welcome, of course, to share it with your expanded teams. We're going to keep this interactive, so feel free to type your questions in the Q&A window throughout the presentation. And we will also be participating in some poll questions. So let's have some fun, get some collaboration and responses going, and feel free to leave some comments in the chat too if you guys would like. And at the end of the webinar today, we're going to set aside about 10 minutes or so of interactive Q&A. So encouraging you guys to ask questions, to collaborate, engage. And if we do run out of time before answering all those questions, we'll make sure to follow up directly with you after. So together, we look forward to making this webinar amazing success. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Teodora.
Perfect. Thank you, Teresa. So I think Teresa covered for the most part kind of how we're going to be structuring this webinar. You can see here in the agenda as well some of the key topics that we want to go through with you today. So we do want to start off by talking about student safety and mental well-being, really looking a little bit more in depth into the youth mental health crisis, what we're seeing here in the US. We know that it's something that's impacting children and young people around the world, really, but we want to look at sort of how this is unfolding here at this side of the planet. And then we want to talk to you a little bit about how we at Linewise look at children's online safety and digital well-being. The two are really indivisible. And we have developed our digital safety and well-being framework to address this issue, but then also to empower our partners, our school districts, when it comes to their approaches to addressing this issue. We want to talk specifically about our early detection and intervention impact area, talk very briefly, very high level about a couple of the products that sit in there. And then we want to finish off by talking about the importance of really being a leader in student safety and really using a data-informed approach, an approach that's really informed by this digital safety and well-being framework. And then, as Dan mentioned, we will be doing that giveaway at the very end. So we hope that you'll stay with us until then. As Teresa mentioned, we will have a couple of polling questions for you as well. We want to learn a little bit more kind of about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing at your districts. And then again, if you do have any questions for us at all, we do have a couple of team members who will be looking at both the chat function and the Q&A function, which you should be able to use. If anybody would like to raise their hand at the very end, we'll be more than happy to unmute you and to have you share your questions with us. So let's dive right in. As I mentioned before, my background is really in the field of psychology. And I've spent a lot of time working individually in group settings with families, with children, and with parents around all sorts of topics to do with behavior, to do with emotions. And so that's really the reason why, personally and as an organization, there's such a great interest there in student safety and mental well-being. And I think we're all pretty clear on the fact that we're at this crossroads right now when it comes to young people's mental health and well-being. We know that this is a topic that is coming up a lot, not just at clinics and sort of therapists and pediatricians' offices, but it's coming up at school board meetings as well. And we're talking to a lot of our districts about this topic. And what we often find when we speak to our partner districts is that as those compassionate and concerned stakeholders, ed tech leaders, understand that they share a responsibility when it comes to really addressing some of these issues, when it comes to identifying the effective ways that the whole educational system really can address these issues, can really use data, the right data, to provide that support, to build that resilience, and to really offer hope, not just to the students themselves, but really to their whole families as well. So let's dig sort of a little bit deeper and look at the mental health crisis here in the US, look at some of the work that's been done around that. So back in 2021, many of you will already be aware of this, that the US Surgeon General over the past couple of years really has been addressing this issue of children's mental health and well-being, going as far as declaring a crisis in 2021. And we also know that the CDC has released their own set of reports and of research looking into this. And what some of their research has revealed is that up to 44% of high school students had reported they had persistently been feeling sad or hopeless. This was back in 2022. And that nearly 60% of girls in particular in the US have been feeling sad or hopeless in 2021. And so this sort of declaration by the US Surgeon General came at the heels of some of that research that the CDC was conducting. In May of last year, there was a new advisory that was issued that was really looking more specifically at the issues of youth loneliness and also looking at the impact that social media use is also having. And again, for all of you who are embedded within schools, within districts, you would have observed sort of the changes in behavior of young people around their devices and around their usage of social media platforms in particular. And we know that these changes in behavior are making things a lot more complicated. They're making it a lot more difficult to, first of all, identify when young people are struggling because they're spending so much time on these devices. And then, of course, it can be incredibly difficult to actually help them as well. And so some of the things that the Surgeon General has pointed towards in these reports and some of the research that's been done around this are issues with loneliness, with isolation, with bullying, both online and offline, these challenges of information overload, sometimes referred to as information obesity. And a lot of these can often contribute to children feeling very anxious, feeling very stressed out, feeling very afraid about the future as well. So it's very clear that the students are struggling, but what are some of the sort of trends that we are seeing? So we're seeing some upward trends, we're seeing some downward trends. We know that there has been an increase in mental health visits among children. Again, these are sort of earlier dates in the pandemic. We know that the quality of mental health for youth has drastically decreased. And something that we often talk to our partner districts about is not just the children and youth who are actually suffering with mental health issues, but they're really quite sort of overwhelming statistics indicating that in each state in the US, there's a huge number of children whose mental health issues then also are left untreated. So that's a really big issue as well. We know that bullying has come up as well, both online and offline. We know that roughly around half, depending on the research that you're looking at, of teens have actually been bullied or harassed online, and this is research from 2022. We know that reports of suicide have also gone up, young people attempting to take their lives as well. And then the other sort of upward trend that we've observed too, which is really relevant for what we're talking about today in terms of using technology as a way of addressing this, is that the factor that has drastically gone up is the amount of time that young people spend online. This certainly went up very drastically during the pandemic, but we were already seeing that upward trend beforehand as well. So what does that actually mean then in terms of how we approach this issue of children's and youth's well-being? We really like to use the iceberg metaphor here. We find that it really illustrates best this idea and this concept around young people's changing behavior, around some of the risks that we can see offline, and then the risks that we will be seeing sort of in that digital realm as well. So when it comes to offline risks, us older people sometimes like to refer them as to refer to them as real life risks as well. You may be using different types of technology to kind of spot and address these already. So you might be familiar with Raptor technologies, Safe to Tell in Colorado in particular as well. We can also obviously just use the power of observation, right, when it comes to children's behavior, when they're in the classroom, when they're in the yard, during breaks, during class. We can really engage in them in that way to spot any differences in behavior, any physical differences, children being absent from schools, which has also become a really huge issue in the US recently. But then there's that whole sort of cluster of issues that lies below the surface. These are the digital risks that we're not necessarily able to see. And these will go back to things like online bullying, inappropriate conversations for young people around things like drugs or violence or extremism, children being harmed or seeking out self-harm information, any other types of sort of unspoken or unshared negative feelings and thoughts as well. So we'd like to start with the first poll that we have for you today out of the couple of polls that we'll be sharing with you. So to begin with, we'd really love to know sort of what you're seeing yourself, the observations that you are making. So what are some of the sort of student safety categories that you are observing most frequently that perhaps worry you the most at your school or your district? So you can see there that there are a few different options there. Many of these I've already mentioned. So things like cyberbullying, grooming, suicide, and self-harm as well. So we'll give it about a minute or so to give everyone an opportunity to select one or more here. So you can choose more than one response if you'd like as well. We always try to achieve sort of 70% response rate. So let's see if we can this time as well. So just give it maybe another 30 seconds or so to get some responses. Okay, maybe another 5 seconds. If you'd like to jump in before we close out. Okay, a couple more seconds. All right, perfect. So what we typically tend to see and what we unfortunately expect to see a lot of the time is how you've all answered as well. So you can see there that suicide, self-harm, and cyberbullying or bullying are the ones that have really attracted the greatest number of responses. We do have violence and sexual content there. And it's really interesting that we did get a response to the misuse of AI. So things like ChatGPT and image generators as well. It's always interesting to sort of follow what the media is reporting, what they're focusing on, but then to also sort of ask questions of the people who are right there on the ground experiencing some of these issues with children's online and offline behavior. You know that there's been a lot of attention recently around generative AI and most often being used, especially in high schools, to create nude or otherwise inappropriate images of classmates. But what we do still see as being the greatest problems within that K-12 sort of setting are the suicide and self-harm and the cyberbullying and bullying. So this definitely reflects what we're seeing in our work with our partner districts as well. So the answer to that question of how can we really utilize that iceberg metaphor and that idea of meeting children where they're at, the answer to that for us here at Linewize is the digital safety and well-being framework that I want to tell you just a little bit about in case you're not familiar and this is your first time seeing this. So the purpose of the framework really is, on the one hand, to bring together all of the different ways in which we support our partner districts, but it's really also there to help unite the school and district efforts with that 360-degree view of children's online safety and well-being. As I've mentioned a couple of times already, we really think of these two things, so the online safety piece and the well-being piece, as having to come together. They have to be connected and they're completely indivisible in this day and age. And so we have these three, what we refer to as the three pillars or the three impact areas that address all of the different ways in which we can support our districts and in turn support students when it comes to both their safety and their well-being. So we have that first area with prevention and enablement. I say first because that's that sort of bare bones approach to online safety. This is where things like the internet filter will sit. So you can think about this as that first line of defense, if you will, that initial prevention and trying to stop issues from actually becoming issues and becoming serious real life incidents. As I mentioned, this is where things like a filter will sit, classroom management tools, and the like. As we then move into that early detection and intervention, this is where we can assume that something perhaps has seeped through, some issues have come through, children have perhaps been affected by inappropriate imagery, or perhaps they're having some issues with their well-being, with their mood. Perhaps there's been adult sexual content they've come into, perhaps they're bullying someone or being bullied, and the like. So early detection and intervention is where the two products that we'll be talking to you about in just a second sit. So this is where we're really now starting to think about how can we actually actively help the students who urgently need support and who have encountered some types of issues, whether online and offline, and these are now having an impact on their well-being. Finally, we come into that third piece, which we find to be, and as you can tell from this graph, just as important as the other two. And this is where, as the Director of Wellbeing, I'm also very heavily involved with this particular part and this particular impact area. So this is where we're really focused on bringing in the whole community, everybody who sits around the child, with that goal of educating and engaging and really empowering them as well. So this is where, as a Linewize partner, you will have that benefit of receiving our resources, our educational resources. Among other things, I deliver live parent webinars to the parent communities at our districts, and we really want to make sure that the parent, and again, everybody who is with that child, really understands the implications of online risks. What do we mean when we say online safety? What are healthy tech habits? And many, many more topics around that as well. This is a slightly more detailed view of the framework. So once we sort of unpack and open up each one of these sections, you can see that more detailed view of the products that sit in each area. For the purpose of what we're talking about during this webinar, we're really only going to be focusing on that early detection and intervention section. These are the solutions that really enable us to provide that timely intervention, as I mentioned, for the vulnerable or at-risk students who have already encountered some issues there. And Monitor and Pulse are those two key products that sit in that impact area. They really, again, going back to that iceberg metaphor, they really help schools and districts go below the surface there, really look at what is happening in that virtual realm and really assist students who need that additional and serious mental health well-being support and whose online safety has potentially been endangered. So I want to give you just a very sort of high level overview of what Monitor and Pulse are like, just to sort of give you a feel for these products. So really the goal of Monitor is to identify those vulnerable students based on their digital behaviors. And the way we really conceptualize those behaviors is by categorizing them in different groups. So I've mentioned some of these already. So there'll be a category around violence, a category around extremist behavior, sexual content, a vulnerable student. So this is where those self-harm searches might come in. Bullying, obviously, which is a really big one. Oversharing, so students who share too much information that could put them at risk, and a few others as well. So it really helps school districts to detect those online risks, ideally before they actually become really serious, really problematic real life incidents as well. So Monitor really works to analyze that online behavior to really identify those students who might be having issues. We do this in a couple of different ways and focus on a couple of different things that we feel are really, really important for this type of technology. So as I mentioned earlier, conversations around AI are the hot topics right now, and AI has a role to play certainly in this type of technology, but we really prioritize human moderators as well. And so AI does sort of some of that groundwork of really identifying when there are potentially problematic situations that children are finding themselves in online. But we really think of those human moderators as being the guardians when it comes to monitoring, not just simply an add-on. When it comes to cyberbullying, just as one of the examples, you really need to have sort of those human eyeballs there to really look at what is going on and really kind of identify the context in which this is taking place, among other reasons, to make sure that we reduce those false positives and obviously don't overwhelm the admins and the staff who are going to be looking at the data coming in through Monitor. The other really important thing is to really empower you to make sure that you can create a review process that works best for you. So really giving you that ability to view and manage and filter and really adjust any of the updates, any of the flagged activity that you're interested in, depending on what information you're interested in, but also who you want to share that information with. So you can set your statuses to track the events that are open, the events that are closed, those that are pending. You can add any notes if you'd like, and encourage our partner districts to do so, and really play around with that data to make sure that you're really getting out of it exactly what you need. Wanted to share here a couple of the statistics. Obviously, we're able to have a really incredible level of insight into these online safety risks and kind of how they play out in virtual spaces with children. So you can see there are a couple of different sort of categories here that we've pulled out for you today. One is in the realm of cyberbullying and cyberbullying risks. So about every 6 minutes, we found a child that was involved in a serious cyberbullying or violent incident. And every about 2.5 hours, we identify a child that was involved in a really serious event that included a risk to their life or to their health. When it comes to cybersexual sort of content or category of events, this is where every about 6 minutes, again, so quite similar to cyberbullying, we found a child involved in this kind of a sexual incident, and then about every 2 hours where it included a pretty serious risk to their health or life. And then roughly about every hour, we were able to find or identify a student that was facing a very, very serious risk to their health and life. So moving on to Pulse now, probably the product, and it's maybe unfair to say this, but the product that perhaps I, again, given my background, am really most excited about for a number of different reasons is Pulse, which is the well-being check-in tool. It really encourages students to self-identify when they need help. And that's probably the key reason why I'm so excited about this product in particular. A lot of the other sort of types of technology that we use to keep children safe online really have to do with us as adults keeping them safe, right? So it can be the filter that the district puts into place. It can be something like Monitor. It can be a parental control tool that the parent uses. But we don't really spend enough time really enabling and empowering the children themselves to actually reach out and say, I'm not okay, or I've been bullied, or I need help. And again, I was mentioning that kind of change in young people's behavior towards the beginning of this webinar. We are unfortunately seeing that as a result of spending so much time online and using devices for communication in the way that children are right now, they're just not as comfortable as we would like them to be to share when they have issues sort of face to face and offline. We do find that a lot of children are just more comfortable using something like an app to actually say that they're not okay, or that something's gone wrong, or they've encountered some kind of online or offline risks, let alone actually ask for help. And what we often talk about with our partner districts is that that walk down the hallway to get to the counselor's office can sometimes really be overwhelming and intimidating, especially for a very young person, a very young child. So Pulse really gives children that channel and that way to actually speak up. And then, of course, for you as a school district, it just gives you that really holistic view of children's well-being. And so a couple of different things here as well that we're specifically focused on when it comes to a well-being check-in solution. What this provides really is that regular sort of cadence or schedule or opportunity for young people to check in, so that it's not a sort of once a year survey that you issue and are really not sort of able to get a lot of detailed, granular information from. So giving these regular well-being check-ins and simply asking students, how are you doing today? And we've seen this from all the partner districts who use Pulse already all around the world, not just in the US, really helps to set up that regular sort of habit of stopping, pausing, reflecting, and then really sharing about how young people are feeling, and then also asking for help if help is what they need. One additional feature that we constantly get feedback on as being the most sort of favorite, best, most loved feature of Pulse from all of our partner schools and districts is this ability for students to share gratitude. So that's something that's built in as a key feature of Pulse. And this is really based on a whole wealth of research from the field of positive psychology that looks at positive behaviors like gratitude and the types of benefits that gratitude can have on our mental health, on our well-being, on our relationships, and even on academics sort of in the long run. So this is something that we really wanted to build into, not just enable children to share when something is wrong, but really give them that opportunity to do something right as well. And they have the ability to share gratitude, not only with their peers, but they're able to do that with the staff at your school and district as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to pause a little bit. You've heard a lot from me, and I'm going to hand it back over to Teresa, who's going to talk a little bit about our student safety audit using Monitor, and then our student well-being analysis that utilizes Pulse.
Thank you, Teodora. Hello, everybody again. So part of what we just talked about is, that student threat detection. We're leveraging AI, human moderation, and all the things to help support our district's resources that are already tight. And what we're doing is we understand every school district, you guys play a different role. And we have an opportunity here to really bridge that gap to create a truly safer place for our students. But the question is, how do we really know that the current prevention and intervention strategies are actually working? So what we have done is we are inviting our districts to participate in what we call our free 30-day student safety audit and/or our student well-being analysis. This takes minutes to deploy. And what it does is these provide actionable, real world data that you can actually use to justify resources and visibility to the events that you may not be seeing today and likely not seeing today in the other solutions that you may be leveraging. And like we heard today in the poll, like violence being a concern, self harm, misuse of AI, applications that your students are leveraging, like Chat GPT, Discord, engaging that student sentiment, we can set this as granular as you need as a district. So maybe it's across a singular school, maybe it's a grade level, or across the entire district. We can show you firsthand how we can mitigate false positives and drive really good data. So when our team gets together, we're going to be leveraging a proven framework here. So we'll work with you to utilize and collect the data to identify all those patterns, trends, potential risks, as well as identify areas to refocus on that student support. So we're going to gauge that student sentiment and evaluate that progress over the audit period. And we're going to identify opportunities together to streamline your existing student well-being strategy and operations. It takes data. I think we all can agree about that. And these results are all data driven. So you can use those to discern those over those school-wide trends and adjust student support accordingly. So we can also substantiate those immediate needs with some tangible data as well. We recognize the resource challenges are real. We get that. So where do we come in and collaborate to adjust those resources to make the greatest impact for your school district? We'll advocate those necessary resources that you may be lacking and address those bullying, those well-being issues. We recognize you have a tons of initiatives going on as a school district, and an audit can really begin a cycle gauging that data over time and supporting your advocacy. So at the end of the audit, just so everyone's aware of the progress, your district will receive a comprehensive safety and or well-being report. This will include key findings for you guys that can be shared amongst key stakeholders, core teams, so to be shared and shown to advocate that. With that, I'd like to open the poll to the group if that's okay. And the poll is this: would your district be interested in a free student safety and or well-being audit of your student body? And we're giving the schools, districts, and our users here an option. If there's something that's more high priority, perhaps you're interested in the student safety audit monitor or the student well-being analysis pulse or both. And if you need some more information, please feel free to share. And we'll hold that poll open for a minute or so.
And as we wait for more of you to answer and fill in this poll, just a reminder that if you do have any questions, please feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A function. We have just a few slides left, and then we'll be getting to your questions. So we'll maybe give it a few more seconds to get your answers here, and then we can move on.
Teodora, give that a few more,
Yeah,
maybe 10,
maybe a
15
couple more.
seconds.
Yeah,
Cool.
couple more seconds, and then we can wrap up. We've got our team, our wizards behind the curtain working the polls. So I think we can probably go ahead and close this poll out now. Thank you. Perfect. All right. And to wrap up, we've shared a lot of information here with you. Obviously, if you have any follow-up questions, any comments, we would love to hear from you. If you're interested to learn more about our audits and analysis as well. Our hope really sort of at the end of this webinar is for you to become, if you aren't already, a leader in student safety. What we have observed through all of our internal work on our safety and well-being framework, also through all of the conversations, all the work that we do with our partner districts, is that at this point, there isn't really one sort of single solution that can address these various challenges that we're seeing, challenges that are also sort of rapidly changing as time goes on. And what we've also realized that there isn't really one single person or one single sort of key stakeholder that can carry all of that responsibility. We have primarily been talking about technology during this presentation, which might lead people sort of naturally to believe that, you know, the IT sort of director, the tech person, is the person who is the one single stakeholder stakeholder who needs to oversee all of this and who's responsible for all of this. And that's absolutely not the case. We know that it's a multi-stakeholder approach. We frequently speak not only with IT directors, but we speak with the psychologists at districts. We speak with the counselors. We speak with people who are in charge of student safety. We speak with people who are responsible for engaging families and parents. And as you could see from our framework, we find that multi-stakeholder approach is incredibly important because really everyone plays a role in addressing the youth mental health crisis, the youth online safety crisis as well. And that's really one of the key sort of the key goals and missions of our online safety and digital well-being framework. The one final thing that I wanted to share with you here is a blog that we recently posted around some of the key findings for schools and for school districts in particular from our Custodio 2023 annual report. For those of you who are not familiar with the name Custodio, that is our parental control tool. So that sits within that third impact area of education and engagement. And what our Custodio team does every year is look through the information, look through the data that was collected over that year and really try and make sense of it, primarily for parents. But we really feel that that data-informed approach, again, Teresa mentioned this earlier, is incredibly important. And we have found that we can use a lot of that data, a lot of the information that we find from the parental control tool to really also inform what school districts are doing. There's some really great, powerful takeaways there for your district that can really improve that parent outreach, improve any types of sort of educational programs that you have available already when it comes to children's online safety and digital well-being. So I believe the URL has been shared in our chat, and then you can also use this QR code to scan, and that will take you straight over to that blog. All right, Dan, I think I'll hand it back over to you now.
Wow, such great information, a lot to digest.
Yep.
I know there's a lot going on there, but
Yep.
it's so vital that we have these discussions to find solutions that can really benefit our communities. So I want to thank you, Teodora and Teresa, for being on the call today. We're excited to partner with you, and we think that what you're doing for our communities and schools is super vital. So thank you so much, you guys.
Absolutely.
And just as a reminder, we have a 500E Generation 4 Chromebook we are giving away to one lucky recipient today. And we thank you very much for joining us. And do we want to have a Q&A at the very end here, or are we good?
Yeah. There was one thing I just wanted to share. I didn't mention it at the time. You can see that there are a couple of URLs that we shared there in the chat. I realized that I didn't point out what the first one is actually about and the purpose of sharing that. This is an article that recently came out in Smoky Mountain News. So this is about a partner district of ours, I believe in North Carolina, that talks a little bit about utilizing Monitor in particular within the sort of wider context of their approach to addressing mental health issues and providing mental health services to their students. So we just wanted to share that with you as an interesting sort of resource, an interesting reference point for what the use of some of these resources can actually look like in practice and how other school districts have done that. So sorry, I realized I didn't mention it at the time, and it might seem a little bit random that URL popped up in there. But yeah, let's look at addressing some of the questions that we have gotten. I'll hand it over to you, Teresa.
Sure thing.
That's okay.
All right, with that, we want to make sure if you haven't had a chance to submit your questions in the Q&A section, you can definitely do some time now. It looks like we've got really a good 15 minutes to address these questions. So I welcome the team to continue addressing and asking those questions, and I'll get them addressed promptly. We'll give a few seconds here. All right. I have one. I'm going to start addressing some of the questions, a couple to start here. So, our district has a challenge of implementing technology and getting buy in from building level admins for tools such as this, saying it's too much work or fear of liability if they can't respond in a timely manner. How do we address that? So, happy to address this. This is part of where something like an audit becomes very, very strong. Where when we leverage a student safety audit to start and we take a look at that across the student well-being analysis as well and those key findings, this is part of our framework where we can actually support that by identifying those risks first and aligning that framework to support your existing strategy or the one that you're currently building. We recognize our districts aren't leveraging a lot of that yet today. And we can mitigate that concern also, in joining that mission together, right? So addressing those challenges like bullying, self-harm, violence, some of the things that got brought up as well around misuse of AI, and then leveraging a targeted strategy that better aligns with the school districts and their responses. So thank you for that question. One other question we have is, can we see and flag images in Microsoft or OneDrive or Drive? I'm assuming Google Shops. So we do actually, we're excited to announce we've actually have a new product within the student safety threat detection that we call Cloud Scan. So as you guys can understand from what Teodora had spoken about previously, we actually build upon what Monitor already does in the ability to detect that data that can be harmful, but now we're taking that into illegal, potentially harmful images, et cetera, lurking on a school's drive. So with that piece, we're detecting some harmful, illegal potential imagery in emails, in chat like Teams, Google Chat, in documents that you might find across Google or your Office 365, and really specifically aligning that toward things like weapons, alcohol, drugs, gore, risque, porn, and CSAM. So what it's doing is that it turns and leverages Linewise Monitor into a truly 360-degree risk visibility tool. And as part of an audit, we would actually invite our districts to test that as well, should you be desired to do that. And with that, I think those are the only questions we had, Teodora.
Perfect. All right. Well, all that's left really is to say thank you. So thank you to you, Teresa. Thank you, Dan, as well. Again, for partnering up to do this webinar. I'm sure we'll have many more. And also just very thankful for everybody who showed up live to watch this. I know that it can be a big ask to ask people to take out sort of 45 minutes of their day for something like this. So again, we really appreciate everybody's time here today.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.